You, you thought the cast of Avengers Endgame was big. Hey folks, I'm going to talk about something I've wanted to talk about for a while, but have had no reason to do so, and now I'm just going to say to hell with it and just do it. I have been playing the same color matching game, 3 of the same color, match them together, they clear away. I've been playing the same one of those for almost 8 years. And I kind of want to talk about the ins and outs as to how that happened. And as we go through this, I'm going to tell you why Marvel Puzzle Quest is awesome, and also why you definitely should not get into it and shouldn't play it. So, maybe a little background on me. I am old enough and have had a smartphone for long enough to remember when mobile games were actually interesting and good. I remember the first Angry Birds. I remember Cut the Rope. I remember when these things were fresh and new, and there were actually fairly complete experiences that you could get. Some were free, some you paid a couple of bucks for, but they weren't all identical variants of the exact same thing. Even within, color matching things, you had Bejeweled, you had Candy Crush. That was kind of the big one for a while. You had these various things of that nature. And I played a fair number of them as time went on. Candy Crush I stuck with for a while, but over time, that and a bunch of others that I don't even remember the names of now, I bounced off of over time. I never did bounce off Marvel Puzzle Quest, though, once I found it. And it's kind of fascinating to think about why. What is it about this game that keeps me coming back? Because in the world of color matching games, it's honestly pretty well designed. And if you're a Marvel fan, absolute bonus. You don't even have to be that deep of a fan, despite how deep some of the cuts in this are. But at the same time, yeah, it's not good. It's good for what it is, but what it is kind of bad. How do I want to go through this? Well, why don't we talk about some of the reasons why I tended to bounce off other games? So to use Candy Crush as a prime example, because it kind of was the template from which all sorts of things spawned, by and large, as you work your way through that, you got only so many chances before you would basically run out of opportunities. You had a certain number of lives, and every failure took a life. So you would find yourself stuck on the exact same area, the exact same puzzle, the exact same board for ages because it was a tricky one, and you would only get 5 chances to beat it in a day, and then you'd have to wait for things to recharge, and it could take a few hours, or depending on how the game was structured, it could be the next day you had to come back. And all of that was designed to frustrate you into spending money. And I refused to spend money on those games. And as a result, all of them I bounced off of. Eventually, whatever fun I was having from the color matching, and it tended to be pretty limited, match 3, they go away. Match 4, maybe it clears a column or a row. Match more than that, maybe you'll get a bigger effect, or maybe those be some items that are limited and you can buy more. Use those to have certain effects, but the novelty would wear off pretty quickly. Yet I stuck with Marvel Puzzle Quest, and strictly speaking, it also has a live system. Your various characters that you control, because you set up a lineup of 3 characters for any given match. It is both PvP and PvE. And you get your lineup, and they will take damage as this goes. Now, that damage will recover on its own over time, but if you want to repair it all instantly, that'll cost you a health token. And you get 10 of those a day. And when I say 10, I mean once it hits 10, it stops recharging further. But if it's anything less than 10, they slowly recharge over time. It's a little bit less than a half hour to get one back. So on paper, it is using the same kind of system that frustrated me out of these other games. So what's the difference? Well, strictly speaking, if you run out of health, it doesn't stop you being able to play the game. It just means you can't heal up whatever current characters might be knocked out or might be at a low enough percentage of their health that it's not worth trying to get through a match with them. But they're not the only ones you've got. So while it might cause you to rethink your playstyle and reformat your team and take a different approach from maybe what is your ideal or your optimized or your preferred, you can actually keep playing. And so the natural question that follows is, well, how many characters are there? I mean, obviously at some point you have to run out. Well, depends on how long you've been playing. This is one of the first reasons why I'm going to tell you you should not start playing this game if you don't play it already. I have every single character banked, most of them championed. Crap, I got to explain that. So every character has 3 different skills that they have, and you can bring those up, and as you go up and get more of them, because obviously this is the kind of game that has randomized elements. They are effectively loot boxes where you get certain covers and certain abilities. And once they get to level 13, meaning you've gotten a version of them 13 times from a pack, you can then set them to champion, in which case you can adjust their abilities because you get 13 points to distribute through 3 abilities with a cap of 5. So you can set 2 abilities at the maximum level of 5 and 1 at a 3 if it's an ability you don't think you'll use much. Or you can set 1 to a 5 and 2 to 4s if you want to go for a more even distribution, or the nature of the abilities that character has have that make more sense. But anyway, coming back to my original statement, I have, at time of recording, every available character currently in my roster, and most of them are championed. The main list of ones that I haven't championed yet are my 5-star characters, a number of whom I could, but it takes a lot of the ISO 8, which is one of the numerous currencies that one used to level up. Because yeah, of course, there's another reason never to get into this game. It also pulls the multiple currency thing. There is the ISO 8, which is used for leveling up. There is red ISO 8, which is used for leveling up your support items, and those are a whole other thing. I'll touch on the supports real briefly. What I like about them is you can't actually use them in PvP. You can only use them in PvE, which is good because in PvP they could completely unbalance the whole thing. So they are really just a nice for fun thing, and I kind of like that. And red ISO 8 you actually can't buy. Some of these you can buy directly. They do that thing where if you spend a lot extra, you get bonus stuff and some of the other currency. But I'm not going to delve into a deep look at the currency system because it suffers from much of the f***ery that most of these mobile games have suffered from for years. But while you can buy some of these currencies, every single currency can not only be earned in-game, but it can also be earned at a pretty decent pace, assuming you have a fully rostered lineup, which again, I only have because I've been playing this thing for 8 damn years. I have no clue how long it would take somebody starting from scratch to be at the level that I'm at. It would be a damn long time, and it would encourage you to spend money, which is why I'm telling you, if you don't already play this game, don't get into it. I'm not going to say I've never spent money in this game. I have spent some. I spent, I think, a total of $60 within the first 3 months of playing it. And then they changed the one mechanic that was enough to get me to buy the currency that was being sold. So what used to happen, because amongst the many things you have to unlock, when you've rostered a new character, or at least you get the card so that you could roster a new character, you also have to have a slot available. You have to buy the slots, not with real money directly, but with the currency that you can buy with real money. And what used to be the case, and this has not been the case for years, but what used to be the case, and this was the one thing that got me to spend money, and I'm a little bit resentful about it, but what used to happen is, once you had a cover for a character, one of the cards for a character for one you didn't already have, if you did not get that added to your roster, i.e. open up a slot, i.e. buy a slot, they would only kind of sit in waiting for a limited amount of time. I think it was a week, might have been less. And so what that meant was you were either scrambling, trying to earn enough of the currency through the normal in-game methods so that you could buy more slots, or you just spent real money to open up the slots. Otherwise, you were at risk of the character dying on the vine before you could actually add it to your roster. This was the one predatory mechanic that did actually get to me a little bit. And if it had never been gotten rid of, I would have had to have bailed on the game because I'm honestly okay with the $60 that I've spent on the game up to this point. That's the cost of a brand new game in most circumstances, and most games have not given me 8 years worth of playtime. So, you know, it's not continuous playtime, but still. So I'm okay with it, but if they kept that mechanic in, I would have had to have quit the game. That was the one thing that hooked me in. That having been said, I and my own particular neurodivergencies line up in such a way that the mechanics that remain don't get to me. I'm actually very good at ignoring them. And again, part of it helps that I'm so far progressed in the game that the only way that I would want to be spending money for more advantages or to level other things up faster or whatever would be if I was really into the PvP, but I'm not. I do it, but it's not the primary thing I'm there for, and it's not what I spend a lot of time doing. If you're very heavy into the PvP, then a lot of the tactics are going to be more effective on you. And also, if you don't just have the resources that I've had, because there are over 300 characters in this, and trying to get them all rostered in anything that feels close to a reasonable amount of time, you are going to be tempted to spend money. And I know it works because I'm also in an alliance. It's their equivalent of a guild. And one of the things that happens is if you spend a certain amount of money, you get a certain amount of sort of bonus of this extra currency, the name of which I suddenly can't remember all of a sudden. It's like shield points? I can't remember. But I know what they are. I know them visually. I just can't remember the name. You'd think I should know this stuff playing it for as long as I did. But regardless, if you buy enough to get a certain extra amount of those, the other people in your alliance also get them. So that's how I know these tricks work, is because it's not super uncommon for me to open up the game and get these bonus points because other members of my alliance have spent anywhere from $10 to $100. And that's how I know that while the remaining tricks, after they got rid of the timer, may not be working on me, but I know they work on other people. Another reason you should not buy this game, I say buy, it's free to play. You should not play this game. You really shouldn't. But I have been, and now we're going to talk about the ins and outs of why I love it. The first thing is that there is actually legitimate strategy to this game. At this point, I've got enough champion stuff and enough kind of very high-level, elite kind of things that when it goes through the various story modes that kind of reset daily, I can trounce most of what's in my way at this point. But that's just where I'm at. Getting here felt like a victory because I had to actually think about what I was doing. Here's what's really fun. I mentioned already the characters' different powers, and those powers range from all manner of things. A lot of them involve some form of damage dealing, either to a single target or to the entire enemy team. Some of them will destroy certain kinds of blocks. Some of them will turn various blocks into a certain color, and maybe that will either help this particular character or another character on their team if they have an ability that's powered up by that color. Some of them have the ability to stun their enemies. There are various special tiles that you can get, attack tiles, strike tiles, defense tiles, to either make you take less damage, deal more damage, or do additional hits per round on the opposing team. And some of the abilities are incredibly straightforward. Just hit for damage. Some are healing. Some are defensive. Some can actually turn characters invisible for either a set amount of time or for as long as a certain special tile remains on the board. All of these things can be taken into account not only for your own team, but against the teams you're facing. Now in the story mode, a lot of the things that you're going to work your way through are just kind of generic things. You know, you're fighting AIM scientists or soldiers or Ultron bots, though actually they're kind of a pain in the ass, but it's that kind of thing. Symbiote spawn, etc. And you know, you work your way through those at high levels. Those can also be damaging, and that's another thing. It doesn't automatically scale up difficulty. You actually choose your difficulty level. I play at max difficulty level when I play the PvE, but that's because of the kind of resources I have. You go at a lower level so that you can still get as much of the rewards for playing that day as possible. Because yes, it does the daily rewards thing, but also actually flat out rewards you for playing. You get rewarded with tokens to open new packs, and of course you can get tokens to open legendary packs or heroic packs or elite packs or mighty packs. And, it's all this sort of stuff that is honestly at this point, if you were to start playing right now, probably overwhelming, probably too many options. I'm very used to it because a lot of this stuff was added over time. I say new, I mean new to me. I've been playing this thing for dang near 8 years, and it's been around for, I think, 10 now. They had like a big 10-year anniversary thing this year. So I've been playing it not as long as it's been around, but pretty close. But that added strategy, that the abilities that your characters have, they build up as you eliminate certain colored blocks. You earn those blocks as kind of a reserve. So if you match 3 green, that ups your number of green points by 3. And maybe you've got, say, one of the versions of Thor that has a green ability that can be set off with 12 green points or something like that. And so the strategy comes not only in matching things and getting as much cleared as possible, because it has the standard match 4, clears the whole row or column or whatever, and that sort of thing, but also getting the things that you need so that you can actually set off your abilities. And it's not just a matter of set it off as soon as it's ready, although they're adding in a new feature to set it so it does automatically fire as soon as it's ready, which I will never use because there are some abilities that are just going to work much better as a follow-up to something else. Maybe you want to stun the team before you hit them with this thing, especially if they've got a healer on their team. So, they're not going to heal up immediately right away. And then there's just all these ways that various characters complement each other, their abilities to complement each other directly. You often need a full team to have all the colors doing something in some form. There's passive abilities that aren't activated, but will automatically happen when certain conditions are met, either when certain things are done by allies, when certain things are done by enemies, or when you acquire a certain amount of this or that color or what have you. Certain conditions will set off something that they do automatically, but they're specifically built to work that way. America Chavez works that way, and she's great. That's the thing. Pretty much all of these characters are workable and viable. Like, some of the very low-level ones aren't terrific. They just aren't, but it's because they're very low level. But even at the level 1s, you get them up to the max level they can get, and if you know what you're doing, you can still work your way through the game to the point where you start getting the 2-star, then you start getting the 3-star, and to keep working your way through. These are all useful, and more than that, they can all be fun to learn and fun to know how to beat, to play against, to be satisfying, to defeat. Like, there really is no character that feels like this just isn't, well, okay, actually, that's not true. There's one, it's Chasm, who I hate. You don't run into him in PvE, but a lot of folks use him in PvP, and I cannot stand him. He is neither fun to play with nor to play against, and he's damn near impossible to kill. But he makes the game boring. I hate him. I actually don't know anything about that character. I know it's something that they're doing with Ben Reilly now, but I only know that because of this game. But I hate him no matter how good he is in the comics, because wow, is he busted. He's too good to not use, but he makes the game terrible. But that one specific balance issue aside, pretty much everything that there is can be countered by something else. And that's actually, you can tell oftentimes, sort of the design mythos. If there's a character that has been being favored a lot, especially in the PvP, then there'll be a new character introduced that will have something that not the entire character will be set to offset what they did, but makes it easier to counteract them and to work on the balance. The balancing with the new characters is fairly continual. If there's a downside to this, I do think they've started introducing newer stuff too quickly. I wasn't keeping track, but it really felt like it used to be every couple of months that a new character would be introduced. But these days it's like once a month minimum, and sometimes I think it's even more frequent than that. And honestly, I think it's too much, and I don't mean in terms of they're running out of characters. They're coming up with some fun characters to do. I'll get into some of that in a little bit, but I mean it much more in the sense of, well, the most straightforward abilities have been covered for years. And even some of the more elaborate abilities, like, oh, you do this and it causes this and that, and like, that's cool. Some of the newer characters, their abilities are so esoteric and they take so long to explain that, like, I barely use them, not because they're not good, but because they're just exhausting for me to use. I keep forgetting because their abilities are not straightforward at all, and then I have to reread the ability every time, and I'm like, I'm just going to play with somebody who I know what they do. Give me my 5-star Kitty Pryde back on this team. I know how she works. This is confusing. And unfortunately, that's kind of a natural progression as the game has more and more and more characters that over time, as it goes, well, the straightforward stuff's all been accounted for. So to avoid power creep in the sense of, well, this one just does the same thing other ones do, but harder and does more damage, they actually do try and combat that by coming up with newer ways for things to work, and props to them for that. But at the same time, it does mean that the abilities are getting a little odd. And yes, every now and then we have massive power creep issues. Chasm is the big one. Immortal Hulk, also kind of an issue. Those two together, especially paired with Immortal She-Hulk, is actually a big go-to PvP team right now. And I hate it, and it's boring to try and play against. It's not even that much fun to play as. But regardless, my beef with Chasm aside, I actually really like how deep some of the cuts are for this. Because as I said, there's over 300 characters in this. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking there's 300 unique characters. There's a lot of duplicates. There is, say, with someone like Spider-Man, there's a 1-star Spider-Man. There's a 2-star, a 3-star. There's a couple of 4-star Spider-Mans. There's at least 2 5-star Spider-Mans. There's some repeats in here, and sometimes it makes sense. And sometimes it's very straightforward, like take Thor. So he has a 2-star version and a 3-star version. He actually has more than that. But just to use as an example, his 2-star and his 3-star version just have the exact same abilities, just does them harder in the 3-star version. Sometimes you get that with some of the things that have been introduced, but other times it is retooled to fit an actual different variant of the character. Like Emma Frost, who started out as a 4-star character. She later on got a 3-star version and a 5-star version. But what's cool here is that the 5-star version is actually the version of her possessed by the Phoenix Force. So there's actually justification for why her abilities are different. And I suppose I should get into the characters. So I'm actually at this point very used to, almost more used to seeing their comic book covers that get shown in the roster. I mean, I see them in the when they go head to head against enemies, but I don't pay a lot of attention to that, if I'm honest. And while I turn them back on to get B-roll for this, I don't actually make use of the character effects very much. I've seen most of them before, and they do slow the game down. And this is a game that I very much play when I'm doing something else, but it's not occupying my whole time. So like I'm listening to a podcast, but I want to do something with my hands, that kind of thing. And it's really great for that. And as someone with ADHD, it takes just enough of my attention that I feel properly like occupied and my mind isn't restless, but it doesn't take so much of my attention that I completely lose track of something else, provided that other thing isn't super overcomplicated. Again, podcast is a great example. But there's some interesting quirks in terms of the way the specific portraits for this game are. Some of them, whether there is a corresponding cover with this design or not, some of them are very clearly far more influenced by the movie versions. And actually, that used to be the reliable thing for timing of when new stuff would come out. Because characters like, say, Killmonger and Shuri came out in association with the release of the first Black Panther. And Namora got released in association with the second Black Panther movie. And you can very much tell that regardless of what the comic book cover that's there as the reference in the roster, you can tell that their design is influenced by the movies. And then sometimes you get the occasional odd bit where the comic book version of the character is stylized to the point that trying to make them fit the artistic style of the rest of the game kind of results in something horrific. Unfortunately, Squirrel Girl suffers from that a fair bit, which is a real shame because I like Squirrel Girl a lot. She's even a decent 3-star card when you're at that point in the game. I haven't played her in ages, but I almost never play 3-star cards anymore, other than certain events that require me to. And even then, she's generally not in my lineup. If I'm going to go 3-star, I'm going to go 3-star Black Panther, 3-star Deadpool, 3-star Kamala Khan, because then I have 3 different options for whole team hit. Oh, 3-star Deadpool. Let's stop and talk about him for a hot second. This is another really cool thing. And it kind of serves as an emergency you option, because 3-star Deadpool, if you play with him daily, he kind of has his own little point system that gets built up day by day. And I'm rounding up here, but about every 10 days or so, you get enough points accumulated to be able to use the superpowered version of his whale drop move. I forget what it's actually called. And you can choose that option. And if you do, That is a full team wipeout. You win if you activate that. Now, as I said, you've got to play with him daily. It takes about 10 days to store up enough to even be able to use it once. So it's not something that you can just spam. And more to the point, it takes 14 purple tiles to be able to get him powered up enough to use it. And if you're in a fight where the only way you're going to win is getting him to fire that, then actually having him survive long enough to get all of the purples that you need to fire it is at times no small feat. So while it is a little bit of a cheat, it's not one you can spam. It's one you still have to earn the ability to use in-game. And to be honest, I still use it. Even at the level I'm at, I will still get into situations. I generally don't use it in PvP, but even in some of the things I get into with some of the PvE, I will get annoyed enough at it and want the reward for that particular fight that I will just go, screw it. I will wipe you out with Deadpool. And you know what? It doesn't feel like a cheat. It feels cathartic. It feels like me just going, okay, I'm just done with you. You're gone now. And it's fun. And there's other little aspects of the strategy, like in the PvP, you're not actually playing another player live. They set up their team and they go after people. You set up your team, you go after people. But when you play against another player in PvP, their team is controlled by the AI, so it behaves predictably. You'll learn as you go. There are certain things you can count on the AI to do when the board is laid out in certain ways. And that can actually be one more thing that adds to the strategy and makes it more than just match the colors. You know what? I've mentioned the roster more than a few times. You're probably wondering who's on it. You know what? Let's do this. Abigail Brand, Abomination, Adam Warlock, Agent Coulson, America Chavez, Ant-Man, Anti-Venom, Ares, Beta Ray Bill, Black Cat, Black Knight, Chasm, Cleo, Colleen Wing, Cosmo, Deathlock, Devil Dinosaur, Echo, Electro, Elsa Bloodstone, Gargantos, Gertrude Yorks, Ghost, Green Goblin, Gwenpool, Hellcat, Howard the Duck, Hulkling, Invisible Woman, Jessica Jones, Kate Bishop, Killmonger, Null, Craven the Hunter, Lizard, M'Baku, Maria Hill, Melinda May, Mr. Negative, Misty Knight, Mockingbird, MODOK, Monica Rambeau, Moonstone, It's Morbin Time, Mordo, Mr. Fantastic, Mysterio, Namor, Namora, Nick Fury, Northstar, Nova, Okoye, Peggy Carter, Prowler, Puck, Red Guardian, Red Hulk, Reptile, Rescue, Rhino, Ronin, Sandman, Scorpion, Sentry, Shang-Chi, Shuri, Silver Knight, Squirrel Girl, Super Skrull, Talos, Taskmaster, The Hood, The Hydra Stomper, The Thing, Throg, Ultron, Venomous, Rex, Vision, War Machine, Winter Soldier, Wong, and Yellow Jacket. And that's just the ones there's only one version of. There are 2 versions of Arcade, 2 versions of Beast, 2 Blades, 2 Bullseyes, 2 Carnages, 2 Colossi, either 2 or 3 Dawkins depending on how you count them, 2 Daredevils, 2 Doctor Dooms, 2 Doctor Stranges, 2 Gambits, 2 Ghost Riders, 2 High Evolutioners, 2 Hit Monkeys, 2 Icemen, 2 Iron Fist, 2 Jean Grey, 2 versions of Jeffrey the Shark, 2 Juggernauts, 2 Kamala Khans, 2 Kangs, 2 Kingpins, 2 Kitty Prides, 2 Luke Cages, 2 Moon Knights, 2 Omega Reds, 2 Professor X's, 2 Riri Williamses, 2 versions of Rocket and Groot together as a pair, 2 Sam Wilsons, 2 Scarlet Witches, 2 Punishers, 2 iterations of the Jane Foster version of Thor, 2 Wasps, 2 Yelena Belovas, 3 Black Panthers, 3 Cyclopses, 3 Deadpools, 3 Dr. Octopi, 3 Electras, 3 Emma Frost, 3 Gamoras, 3 Lokis, 3 Magics, 3 Magnetos, 3 She-Hulks, 3 Spider-Gwens, 3 Star-Lords, 3 Thanoses, 3 Thor Classics, 3 Venoms, 3 Vultures, 4 Captain Marvels, 4 Human Torches, 4 Iron Men, 4 Storms, 5 Black Widows, 5 Captain Americas, 5 Hawkeyes, 5 versions of the Hulk if we lump in Totally Awesome Hulk. If not, then there's 4 versions of the Bruce Banner and 1 Amadeus Cho, either 5 or 4 Wolverines depending on how you count them, 7 versions of Spider-Man, and that's only counting the ones that are actually some incarnation of Peter Parker. That's not counting the ones that are not Peter Parker but still hold a similar title, such as Penny Parker, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Woman, Silk, Spider-X, and Spider-Ham. And aside from what I've specifically named, there are 6 Asgardian or Asgardian-related characters, 2 Eternals, 5 miscellaneous Guardians of the Galaxy, 6 Inhumans, 30 miscellaneous mutants, and to top it all off, Big Wheel as a 5-star. So yeah, there's a lot to this game. And they keep adding more, and for me, who's been playing it for a long time, that can be a good thing because it gives me more things to do, to acquire. I've still got a lot of leveling up to do for these characters, but add it to the mountain of reasons why I don't recommend anyone start playing it, because they're adding more stuff that's great for me, who's exhausted all the lower level stuff, but for someone new to come in, to see how much there is to gather, to know how long it will take if you don't spend money, I don't recommend anybody jump into that environment. But I do love this game. I really love this game. I have been playing it for years, and I don't intend to stop. I'm still having fun with this. And I am also the kind of person who just needs a go-to, like, I've got a few minutes, my brain needs to be occupied, I can play this. Or I can't focus, I have something I need to do, but I can't focus on it completely. I need something to do with my hands. Oh, I can play this. I need something to fill that role. And Marvel Puzzle Quest has done it better than anything else I've ever had and lasted longer doing it. Everything else that I've ever used to fill that kind of niche, I've bounced off of eventually over time, no matter what it was. Whether it was this, whether it was Sudoku, whether it was Wordle, whether it was Words with Friends, whatever. But this? No, I'm probably with this one for as long as they keep doing it. Provided that they don't manage to shift to the monetization to a model that actually makes me tempted to buy again, because then I might have to bounce. And if that does happen, I hope they realize how long and devoted a player they will be losing. But that's Marvel Puzzle Quest. It's a game that I love, and you should not play. Have you ever played Marvel Puzzle Quest? If not, what did you think about what I said about it? If you have, what's your favorite team? I mean, my go-tos, and they have been for a while, granted I play mostly PvE, is 5-star Kitty Pryde, Polaris, and 4-star Rocket and Groot. It's an easy go-to. That's when I'm dealing with some of the higher end, actually the lower end stuff. Replace 5-star Kitty Pryde with 4-star Juggernaut, and you just wipe them out in 1 or 2 turns to clear the low-level stuff when you're doing story mode. I found myself using Mighty Thor an awful lot too. She's just a fantastic go-to. She slots into so many teams really, really well. But what are your thoughts? What do you play with? What do you think of what I've described? What do you think of that roster lineup? Whatever your thoughts are for this mess that I have described and that I continue to sink time into, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living, where I sometimes do this nonsense, apparently. But don't worry too much about it. There's other stuff that I do down in the description you can check out. But ultimately, what I want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You're the council, I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council is adjourned. Shout out to the patrons who help make this possible. In particular, I want to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Litfulla, Goddess Elida, Tarak, the thing that goes joined to the anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabilax the Poodle, Robin Powell, T. Love, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, and Rosalind Bennett. There's being able to hear me try and pronounce your name, plus a whole bunch of other rewards in the Patreon. You can check out the tiers, but if you're already on the list, thank you so much.